sell them. Sure, Joe.
Sure.
And they have their own program. They're not in GIC.
No.
They have no intent of going there.
Yeah, they're not even pursuing GIC.
Right. And a couple of the
They're
other
under HMO.
communities aren't pursuing it. Andover, and we're looking into, you know, if there's any real value to this. They went ahead and they raised the co-pays significantly. Let me finish. Let me finish. They raised the co-pays significantly and made a big savings. And what they're doing is they're paying the town's paying the co-pays, and they got ahead of the game. You know, it seems like crazy math, but it's certainly something to look at, and it is being looked at.
Okay, are you doing that with them in regards to our schools, in regards to our PPWs and things like that?
Frankly, we've met half a dozen times so far, and all of that time has been spent on making a presentation to the Secretary of Administration and Finance at the State House. And basically, the presentation and the appeal was related to a lot of the state legislation, mandates, let's call it, that prevent us from doing the things that the state can do. Now, the state, for example, can change the copay or change the benefits of the health insurance program under the GIC. They don't have to bargain with the unions. When they put the flagman issue up, right, they just made the change. They didn't bargain with the unions. We're required to do so under our contracts. So, you know, it's our hands are tied, and you know we're trying to make some progress, but it's not something that can happen overnight. And we are listening to these messages. The problem is that a lot of these things take time.
And the last thing I had was next Monday night, 17th of November, FAC is going to present to the Board of Selectmen our presentation, our final presentation on a dual tax rate for the town of Delray. I know it can be a heated issue, but I really think it's important for every resident to try to show up. Senior citizens to the young people in this town, I think it's important to come and just listen to our discussion. I think it's time, this is a particular subject that I believe a lot in, it's time for us to consider it. And we're going to be presenting that to the Board of Selectmen again on the 17th of November at Town Hall.
And as a follow-up to that, the Board of Selectmen will be setting the tax rate on the meeting on the 17th.
North 68 North Street. Is there a fallback? If the GIC doesn't work, can we just raise the co-pays? Is that a negotiation? Is there a deadline for that? If the December 1st is a deadline for the GIC, is that also a deadline for raising co-pays? Because if the GIC doesn't go through, couldn't we still save money with raising the co-pays?
No, there's not necessarily a deadline. The current health insurance program runs from August 1st to July 31st. And I don't know what maybe the town administrator could comment on the timing of if a change was made, when it would have to be made. It is subject to negotiation.
First question was, is there a fallback? Yes, there is a fallback. The fallback is to deal with our current insurer and have our insurer submit a cost-effective insurance program, which we would then present to our employees, and we're currently doing so. We're currently meeting with our insurer to formulate a program. Second question that I believe you raised was, does the town have the right to unilaterally implement something that may not be reached at agreement at the bargaining table? For example, co-payments or other changes in plant structure. And unfortunately, under Massachusetts general law, we do not have that right. The town must bargain to agreement. We have a legal obligation to do so. It's a bitter pill that I'm sure people in this room don't want to hear, but that is an obligation that we do need to adhere to, and we need to work cooperatively with our employees in trying to affect that strategy. So it is unique to the public sector. It's unique to Massachusetts law. And the reason why some of these unique attributes exist is because when you're dealing with employees in public safety, police and fire, by law those employees are prohibited from striking. So as a result of not having the ability to strike as General Motors or Ford does, they're afforded additional protections. So please just keep that in mind, that that's why the law was written way back when the way it was, is to prevent employees the right to strike.
Let's see, I guess, gentleman in the back, you just had your hand up.
Mr. Massey, just a quick question for you. As far as the solution that Andover came up with, have any numbers been put together, any thought been put into doing something like that? I'd be curious to see if you did a little analysis what the saving, if you looked at what you'd be paying an extra by paying the co-pays versus potential savings in premiums, the amount of employees that we have under the current plan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
That's part of our strategy.
that is
But we don't want to
under consideration.
deal with the strategy.
Yeah, you can't.
Yes, sir.
I'm Mike Kirby, 4 Parsonage Lane. I just want to expand on a point that I think Mr. Venezia made a minute ago. I can actually, as a member of the Finance Committee, I've studied the sort of the salaries that town employees in this town receive. And to be honest with you, I don't think that for the most part anyone's really making an exorbitant, living an exorbitant life working for this town. So I'm actually very sympathetic. And I also appreciate the point Mr. Venezia made about how I would understand how they could feel like the whole thrust of the town's economic situation is being placed on that. So I'm actually quite sympathetic in that regard. But the one thing I think is very important to keep in mind is that, and I think when we talk about copay changes, I actually make my living, working in the health insurance field. And basically copay changes are shifting costs from one group of people, which would be the town, to another group, which is the employees. And that actually is akin to salary reductions. But where I find it particularly frustrating as we talk about this topic is with respect to the GIC. Because the GIC, with respect to comparable benefits, the sharing of the savings is proportional to the sharing of the premium in the first place. So to the extent that the town saves money, that's 70% of the net savings. To the extent that the overall cost goes down, the employees get 30% of the savings themselves under the same contribution distribution. So to then come back and expect the town to basically pay them for the privileges of changing the plan and use that as a backdoor way to frankly increase the town's contribution, to me is not fair, and frankly is not in the spirit of moving this town forward. I wouldn't expect people to have significant reductions to a 2% merit pool or a 3% merit pool or whatever that is. That's not extravagant. But we need to be looking at the GIC as a fundamentally different consideration with respect to the way we negotiate with the unions. It is, and you can argue about comparability of benefits. There might be slight differences in network design between doctors and hospitals folks have availability to. But if you save a buck, and that buck was paid 70-30 in the first place, the buck that's saved should be shared 70-30. And we should not be compromising on that. And to hold this up and to hold the town hostage for that purpose, I find unconscionable, to be perfectly candid.
Anyone else? Deanna?
Tina Casper, 9 Broadway. Just a couple of observations and a question at the end. As far as understanding the burden of the responsibility of economic times and things like that, and cuts across the board, both on the school side and the government side, I'd say, we all would rather not be making the difficult decisions we're making, but I think that we realize in this small community, without state aid and other things helping us out, we have exhausted a lot of possibilities, and our hands are tied too. So going back to my point where if every employee was to give up just a little bit, we won't be having these drastic conversations and crises every time we turn around. Just to put that in perspective, let's see what's going on around us. People in this community, in everywhere we turn, are losing their jobs. They are losing their homes. There are 99 families in this community that are getting, help by the food pantry. Big corporations that have been successful over the years are not making matching contributions for 401ks anymore. A lot of companies are not giving out any pay increases. Bonuses will probably be held back. These are the things, the difficult choices you have to make. That's what happens. There's probably not too many people in the private sector who haven't had their premiums negotiated or taken away, or they've had to pay a larger share. It is a reality of what is going on all around us. Corporations, there's hundreds of billions of dollars in buyouts. We all have to pitch in. And as far as people feeling responsibility of the cuts, I would argue that the children of the town of North Reading are the ones who had the burden of the cuts, and will as well if we don't work in the right spirit of cooperation and compromise. And as far as a group of people, and this is not for the benefit of school people because they all know this, but if there are other people watching, parents have borne a tremendous amount of responsibility when the budgets are cut because we have school lunch increases this past year. We pay school bus fees to get our kids to school. Every child has to pay a fee to play a sport, hundreds of dollars. To participate in a co-curricular opportunity to do outside class outreach, they pay fees. If you do an after-school program at the middle school, you pay a fee. If you play a sport in the middle school, after school, you pay a fee. If you participate in any intramural sports, which my kids do 3 every single season, you pay an additional fee. If any of us do Parks and Rec, and we all have kids that do that, we're now paying additional fees. When we took away band and chorus to implement some of the instruments that came back, parents had to pay a fee. I would love for the school department to do a survey someday to find out how many parents in this community over the last few years have had to hire personal tutors to make up for the deficiencies and the lack of resources that our children have had in the classroom. All these fees, if you add it up, cost thousands and thousands of additional dollars every year that we cannot write off on our taxes. In addition, our parents used to be able to send us to school and have supplies. I'm going to read ad nauseum, and I apologize, what parents are responsible to send their children to school with just in the middle school. And I'm reading from the requirements. The school will supply each student with an assignment notebook, paid for, I just know this, by the Parents Association. General all grades, number 2 pencils, pens, black, blue, and red, a ruler with inch and metric scale, colored pencils, colored markers, whiteout, erasers, pencil case, 1 3-ring binder for every academic subject. In the 7th grade, there are 6. Dividers for binders, loose leaf paper for binders, 3-hole punch to go into a binder, and a pocket folder for music. That's the standard for every grade level. For grade 7 in math, 6 more dividers for that 3-ring binder, 6-inch ruler, protractor, highlighter, spiral-bound notebook, 4-function calculator. For science, a 70-sheet spiral-bound notebook. For language arts, an additional composition book. For Spanish, for an additional 1 1/2-inch 3-ring binder, you need 3-page dividers, lined filled paper, a red pencil, an inexpensive 3-ring pencil case, 1 package of flashcards, 2 plastic durable pocket folders, and 12 clear plastic page protectors. That's a standard. It doesn't say if you can't pay, someone's going to provide. And I wonder what would happen to a child if they showed up and couldn't afford to provide those basics. Those are all fees that parents bear as a standard. That's what our schools do not supply.
Well, the economic situation that we're in, and it's what it is. And as everyone knows, we've struggled over the past few years just to balance our budgets and to try to provide a reasonable level of services. We made an all-out stretch last year to bring the schools back. And this year, and you know, I brought the issue of the 2010 budget up, not so much to have a discussion of that. We've got a lot of work to do to close that gap and to find ways of preventing, you know, additional cuts. But the bottom line is that the economy is in the tank, and it's impacted the current year's budget. And as a result, it's going to have a bigger impact as we go forward. And it's only fair that everybody is aware, notified of it, and be assured that we're working hard to try to resolve these issues.